Okay, so the tzitzis, first of all, the idea of wearing tzitzis is the proverbial string on the finger. That means that if a person is wearing tzitzis and you got your strings out, it gets interesting reactions, by the way, when people see tzitzis. If you walk through an airport and people are they're trying hard not to look. They call it the Jew strings, and what do you call it? I remember when I was in college, so you had a couple of people asked me what those strings are. There was a Quaker. I remember this girl was a Quaker. She was asking me about the yarmulkes, about what the yarmulkes, and if the different colored ones, the knitted yarmulkes, if they'd represent. I thought she said to me, do the different colored ones mean you're from a different tribe? And I thought that was pretty unique. Yeah, that was pretty clever. And so the tzitzis are certainly intriguing. The Jew strings. And the idea is that because the tzitzis, which in the old days had the blue, had a string of blue, tchelis, we'll talk about that in a second. And so the tchelis on the tzitzis represents the blue of the sky, and it reminds you of the ocean, which the ocean reminds you of the sky reminds you of God's throne. And so the idea being that it reminds you that you're being watched. And not only being watched, you're being supervised. So if you're wearing the tzitzis, it says, the gentleman in the back, hi, do you guys have, do you have chumashim? Did you get a chumash? Okay, good. So if you have we're on page 8, what are we? 816. So if you have the tzitzis remind you, and it's on the four corners, reminding us that God rules the four corners of the earth, even though the earth doesn't have corners, the flat earth society notwithstanding. But the earth doesn't have four corners. Yet the tzitzis is just a reminder everywhere you look that there is accountability and supervision. So a person's wearing the tzitzis. Now the tradition is to wear them out because the Torah says, Uri isam osam, you should see them. The idea is to see the tzitzis. The fact, by the way, the garment itself is not part of the tzitzis. Theoretically, any four-cornered garment requires tzitzis. So they have actually come up with sports tzitzis. Because when we used to play basketball, so you had one or two tries. Either you kept your tzitzis on and they got all sweaty, or you just played without your tzitzis. And sometimes you played with your tzitzis, you made a basket and then kissed your tzitzis. But what do you call it? Bang. You kiss it. So they have actually a T-shirt, and if it's cut up. If the T-shirt is cut more than halfway up, if a shirt is cut more than halfway up, that constitutes four quarters, and you can put tzitzis on them. So guys have like the what do you call it? the basketball sports tzitzis. So the idea is that wherever we look, we have this reminder of who we are. And a person who has tzitzis is unlikely in a moment of temptation to go into McDonald's if he's wearing tzitzis. And the tzitzis becomes their protection. If I'm wearing tzitzis, I can't go into McDonald's. I may just take them off, put them on after a cheeseburger, but generally you're not going to do that. Generally the tzitzis becomes that reminder of who we are and what our responsibility is, number one. Number two is the idea of the blue string and what was called the tcheles, which is some sort of shade of blue. Now we know that the tcheles comes from a marine creature called a chilazon. The problem is we don't know what the chilazon is. And the Torah indicates, if you take a look at page 816, 4 lines from the bottom. Well, I'll just start the whole paragraph. Daber o b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleim v'asulaim tzitzis al kanfei vigdeihem l'dorosam, on the corners of their garments throughout their generations. So we see that the tzitzis are going to have to be worn throughout our generations. Yet v'nosnu al tzitzis hakanav pisol techeles. Then you should put on a thread of blue. But regarding the thread of blue, it doesn't say generate throughout the generations, which the commentaries see as an allusion to the idea that one day the tradition will be lost. Tzitzis we're going to have to wear throughout the generations, and then only after that it says, and you put a thread of blue on them. So that means that the thread of blue, we have lost the tradition for what it is. Now, in 1895, Rav Henoch Leiner, who was the Radziner Rebbe, he did some serious research. I think he went to a water observatory somewhere in France. It was somewhere in France. How do you say water observatory in French?
Marine biology.
A marine biology, yeah. How do you say that in French? Oh, there you go. That's exactly what I thought. And the what do you call it? So he went to this. No, I know he's from France. And he went to what do you call it? He went to this. He did research, and he came up with some sort of marine creature which he claimed was the chalazon, and produced tchelas. He wrote a couple of books on the subject. His opinion was not accepted by the mainstream gedolim of the time, and the Radziner Hasidim to this day wear tchelas. The Radziner Hasidim, his followers, do wear tchelas, and people who live in Sfas wear tchelas. But the mainstream orthodoxy does not. Now, you have to know that the question is not why and then what. We look at things from the other direction. What, and then we could ask the why. Not the why and then figure out the what. What do I mean by that? The what is Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Elyashiv, the Chazon Ish, the Chafetz Chaim. None of these, that's the what. None of these people who were more God-fearing and frum than I am, none of these people wore tchelas. And therefore, I don't wear tchelas. That's the what. Why didn't they wear tchelas? Either I'll understand it or I won't. But the first is the what. The what is they didn't. Why didn't they? Because we've lost the tradition. And the mainstream gedolim, or poskim, are of the opinion that in order to wear tchelas, it's not enough to prove it in a laboratory. So it doesn't matter how many laboratories you've been proven in. We need a tradition. We need a Masorah, and we've lost that Masorah. And until the Mashiach comes, we will not be able to be wearing regular, the tchelas, legitimate tchelas. And therefore, we don't wear the tchelas at all. The idea that, but what could it hurt? The idea that what can it hurt to put on the tchelas, which is what many people ask, you see that first of all, it could hurt, because if it's not tchelas, then we have an artificial color on the tzitzis, number one. Number two, the Chazon Ish said there was an eccentric man who used to live in his community. He was an eccentric, and Herschel the eccentric, and he used to walk around with glasses frames without lenses. So somebody said to me, Herschel, that doesn't help. He says, well, it can't hurt. Yeah. So, there's a certain line where something can't hurt. There are sometimes where it can't hurt, and you do it. Well, it can't hurt. If it won't help, it can't hurt. Like doing certain medical treatments, taking natural pills or a placebo or something, if it doesn't hurt, it can't hurt. Maybe it can only help. There are other times where it's absolutely useless. That means if it's not tchelis and it's paskana, you're not accomplishing anything. There is nothing to accomplish, because if inherently, without a Masorah, it is not considered tchelis, so it doesn't even if you put it on, even if you happen to get lucky and put on the actual tchelis, but that's not considered tchelis under the circumstances because you don't have the Masorah. And you require a Masorah in order to reestablish it. And therefore, that's the what he got. Now, why do we put on the tchelis? So remember, I told you yesterday that the tzitzis represents, the first third of the tzitzis represents the straight and narrow path that we start off on. And then we branch out into our own various, paths in life, using what we've the foundations that have been established. Okay, there's another idea here that it represents the various things that we go through in life. The various paths. There's people go this way and they go this way, and you go this way to get married and you get a job. The tcheles string, which wraps around it and reminds us of Hashem's throne, that is the indication that at the end of the day, while we're doing everything that we're doing, at the end of the day, it's under Hashem's supervision. Right? So we have to take the correct steps, and we have to realize it's under Hashem's supervision. Remember, I told you the story with Shlomo HaMelech. Can I trouble somebody just to make it a little colder in the room? Like a lot colder. The Gemara says that King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, once met the angel of death, Malach HaMavis. And the angel of death looked sad. Shlomo HaMelech asked him, why are you so upset? Why do you look so sad today? I guess it's not such a cheerful job. He said to the angel, why do you look sad? He said, well, there are these two guys that I've been sent to terminate their lives. It's a Gemara in Sukkah. He said, the two guys that have been sent to terminate their lives, and I haven't been successful. So Shlomo HaMelech called in the Shadim, one of the heads of the Shadim, the demons. He also had communication with the demons. Shlomo HaMelech was very impressive. He called in the head of the Shadim. He said, I want you to transport these two men to the city of Luz. The city of Luz is a city which the Talmud says nobody ever died in the city of Luz. In the city of Luz, once people became tired of living, they would leave the city and then they would die. But in the city of Luz, they never lied. They didn't. There was a city with a total truth, so there were no politicians there. There was a total truth in the city. Nobody ever died in the city of Luz. So he said, even though they were called the losers, but nobody in the city, the losers were the winners, but nobody died in the city of Luz. So Shlomo HaMelech told he told the head of the demons, transport these two men to the city of Luz. The next day, so he was on the way to transporting them to the city of Luz, and right as they got to the gates of the city of Luz, the angel of death got them. They died before they could get into the city of Luz. The next day, Shlomo HaMelech saw the angel of death. He was all smiles. He said, why are you in such a good mood? He said, because exactly where I needed them, you sent them. Wow. So at the end of the day, if you were Shlomo HaMelech, what would you have done? I would have done the exact same thing. If I know a couple of guys that need to die, and I liked them, they were very beloved of Shlomo HaMelech, they're two of his servants, so he did the logical thing. He sent them to the city of Luz. So what went wrong over here? The answer is, remember the example I once gave you about crossing the street? It was a 16-lane highway. And the first guy runs closes his eyes, runs across the 16-lane highway. Cars are slamming on their brakes all over the place, skidding all over the place. And the guy makes it across the street, and he finds a wallet with $30,000 in it. The second guy looks both ways carefully, waits for all the traffic to clear, starts crossing the street, and right in the middle of the highway, a light aircraft crashes into him and kills him. Okay? Now, you're the third guy. Right? And you've got all the data available. Which are you going to do? Which are you going to do? You're going to close your, listen, look, let's find out that. This guy closed his eyes and ended up living with $30,000. And this guy was careful, cautious, and ended up getting crushed. Right? So what are you going to do? The answer is we all know what you're going to do. You're going to look both ways and wait for crush. Right? Maybe you'll look up also. Right? Why? Because at the end of the day, we have to behave responsibly and make responsible decisions. But not make the mistake of thinking that the results are in our hands. Because there are plenty of people who've done everything right and it comes out wrong. And there are plenty of people who've done everything wrong and it comes out right. And that's what the tzitzis, the tchelis is reminding you, you have to live life, whatever path you follow, you have to live life responsibly. We live with probability, not possibility. We live always with probability. You make the right investments, and you marry the girl that looks like it'll work out best, and you get the job that you think you'll do best at, and so on and so forth. We live with probability, but we have to understand that sometimes the probability works, even with all the right calculations, things could still go, it's left under Hashem's supervision. And that's what the Torah teaches you with the tzitzis. The tzitzis is a four-corner reminder that at the end of the day, we're constantly under Hashem's supervision. There's actually did you ever hear of Stephen Bradbury? You ever heard of Stephen Bradbury? In Australia, you never heard of Bradbury? To do a Bradbury, that's an expression used in Australia, to do a Bradbury. Stephen Bradbury was an Olympic ice skater from Australia. And the Australians have never won a gold medal or any medal of any sort.
Ice in Australia?
There's no ice in Australia because the old man who knew the recipe died. But Stephen Bradbury was an Olympic skater for Australia, and he was competing in the finals. And what happened was he was running fourth. There was an American, a Russian, a Japanese were first, second, and third. One of them wiped out. One of them, and they were meters from the finish line. He was in fourth place, and one of them slipped, and he knocked out the second guy, knocked out the third guy, and Bradbury skated around them, and he won a gold medal in the Olympics. And he said in the semifinals, he was also running fourth, and the guy in third place fell. And he managed to finish third in order to qualify for the finals. He said afterwards, part of his strategy was hoping people fall. That's what he said. And he went, now, the odds against it are astronomical, right? But he got the gold medal. There was a guy named Andre Refray. Have you ever heard of Andre Refray? And a woman named Jean Calment. I think I'm pretty sure she's French. Jean Calment. How's my accent is good, right? Jean Calment. And Andre, there's probably an E-A-U-X in there somewhere. And a man named Andre Raffray. Andre in France, they had an arrangement, I don't know if they still do, they had an arrangement where an older person who was living alone would be supported by a younger person. They would pay them 500 francs a month. And when the older person died, then the younger person would inherit their flat and all their property and so on and so forth. Andre Raffray was 41 years old, and Jean Calment was 91 years old. And they entered this arrangement, right? She was 91 and he was 41. 31, and it pays 500 francs a month. 31 years later, at the age of 72, Andre Raffray died. 3 months later, Jean Calment, at the age of 122, died. Right? And she became the oldest living woman in the Guinness Book of World Records. Now, if 91 years old, do you think it would have been a good investment? I would have done it. I would have done it, at 91 years old. I mean, how long is she, make it to 100, right? 100, she lived 31 years. He ended up paying more than 3 times the value of her flat. Could you imagine what he was davening for in Shemona Esrei? So he paid it. Now, was it a good investment? Was it a great investment? It was great. It was a great logical investment. But what went wrong? Nothing went wrong. The Ribono Shel Olam, Hashem is running the world. And that's what this is a reminder of. This is a reminder that at the end of the day, we're under Hashem's supervision. Okay. Yeah, question. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, why is it not considered that there are tzitzis are possible if they don't have a color?
Oh, good, because the Torah indicates that we have to have tzitzis, even if we don't have the tchelis. The tchelis is not. It's right. You have to have the tzitzis and you have to have the tchelis. And by the way, whoever finds the tchelis gets rich, because it's going to be in demand. Right, and whoever finds it will be able to, kind of control the market. So you can do 2 things: daven that I should find it. That when Mashiach comes, daven that I should find it, and you might want to daven that I don't find it, because if I do, then you're going to be paying a lot of money. But that's what happens. Whoever finds it. Yes.
So I was wondering. I know you said generally we don't use the chelis because the building didn't. But if you had an individual who, for personal reasons, felt that wearing the chelis would help him with the mitzvah, either he just thought it was visually appealing. And so
we don't do that. And it's an important question you're asking. In Yiddishkeit, we don't leave it to personal whims. That means within certain areas, I feel that I'd rather learn Chumash, he'd rather learn Gemara. There is room for that sort of thing. But to tamper with the mitzvah, number one, and let's say a guy picks up the lulav estrog hada, he's got the 4 species on, and he thinks, if I put in a rose in there, add a little red, that would just add, just make the whole thing, the whole package better. Then he's transgressing a Torah command because he's adding on to the mitzvah, which is prohibited. You're not allowed to add on, and there's always you're not allowed to add on or detract from the mitzvahs. It's a very, very tricky thing. Once we start tampering with the mitzvahs, where are you going to push it to? Well, if 4 parchments in my tefillin are good, then 5 must be better. Yeah, but it's not so, because if you put in 5, then you are going to get then you are transgressing a Torah command of Bal Tosif. And therefore, we are very careful about tampering with, this couple eats by somebody's house. They go in and they have they eat there for Shabbos, and the wife serves this delicious apple cinnamon cake for dessert. Absolutely, the husband is just gaga. So he goes home, and he says to his wife, maybe you could get that recipe for the apple cinnamon cake. So she calls up her friend for the recipe, and she goes, great. And she goes home and she bakes this cake, and the husband tastes it, and the wife says, how was it? And he's like, yeah. And when a husband says, yeah, it means it was horrific. It was, that wasn't quite the same. And the wife says, well, I don't know. She calls up her friend. She says, I made that apple cinnamon cake, but somehow it didn't come out right. She says, well, did you use those special delicious apples that I told you? It has to be the delicious apples, She says, no, I actually couldn't find apples, so I used pears. She goes, And did you use the fresh ground? Did you use the fresh ground cinnamon like I told you? She said, well, no, I didn't find so. I used oregano. And did you use the special shortening that I told you to use? The special shortening you're supposed to use? No, I used the freshly squeezed olives. And then if for some reason it didn't come out the same, well, why not? Well, why not? Because you tampered with the recipe, so it doesn't come out the same. If you tamper with the recipe, so there's a limitation. A person who says, "I feel that this is something that inspires me," you have to be very careful, because sometimes people say, "This is my way of serving Hashem." Everybody's got their way of serving Hashem. The fact that it's a person feels that that's their way, Judaism isn't a religion that says, "Well, everybody just do what you feel is right." It doesn't work that way. We have a prescribed way of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whether we feel inspired or not, hold for a little while. Whether we feel inspired or not is not a prerequisite. And understand that well. A person does not have to put on tefillin. I've had guys who put on tefillin the first time say, "Wow, I feel so spiritual." And I've had people say, "I didn't feel anything." Right? Sometimes people think they'll put on tefillin and they'll feel the exact same sensation as after 4 beers. Well, it isn't. And if a person, you may feel that you're losing circulation in your hand, because you got the tefillin wrapped on, your arm is turning blue. That could be. The fact that you may feel or don't feel is not a prerequisite. If we do the right thing, we do tend to feel a certain connection, however you describe that connection. But it's not a prerequisite. It's not a prerequisite. You have to go to work every day, whether you enjoy work or not. And whether, I love my job. And today I don't feel like going to work, so I'm not going to work. I don't love my job. So you got to go to work every day. We have to do it every day. For the most part, if you're doing it properly, and you're not overdoing it, and you're not underdoing it, and you're following the rules, you will feel a sense of fulfillment. You will feel. Will you always feel a sense of fulfillment? I got news for you. No. And when you get married, you're going to feel sometimes that there's a very strong, the marriage is great, marriage is wonderful. And when you're doing a sink full of dishes, right, after being up with the baby at 2 in the morning, then it's not like, my favorite, crusty chunk pots, No, that's not always like that. You may feel, listen, I enjoy helping my wife and so on and so forth, but it isn't always the buzz that people would like it to be or pretend that it is. So that's as far as what do you call it. By the way, sometimes your mother's probably said to you sometimes when you were growing up, didn't your mother ever say, she asked you to do things, say, well, if you're going to do it with a smile. Or do it happily. Didn't you ever hear that music from your mothers? If you're going to fold the laundry, fold it with you're grumbling and groaning. And so if you're going to do it happily. Do it with a smile. I never said that to my kids. I never said it to my kids because I don't see that all the mothers are always smiling. What, all the mothers are smiling when they're doing laundry? All the fathers are smiling when they're going to work? Not everybody smiles. I said to my kids, listen, guys, we need the laundry folded. You want to smile, smile. You don't want to smile, don't smile. We can't wear wrinkled clothing, right? So you got to do it. That's what Yiddishkeit is. Most of the time, it's what do you call it? When you're stuck on an airplane and they don't have your kosher meal and you're going to eat bananas and apples for 12 hours, it's not like, oh, good, my favorite. I'm being tested. I love it. No, it doesn't work that way. Or when you're going to lose money because you can't go to work on Shabbos, it's not like, oh, you get fired from your job because you didn't come to work on Shabbos. All right, nowadays it's not going to happen. It's the best thing that could happen to you nowadays because they can sue and become a multimillionaire. But in the 30s and 40s in America, there were people who didn't work on Shabbos and had to find a new job every week. Was it fun? It wasn't fun at all. It's not always fun. Sometimes it's most of the time there will be a sense of fulfillment. Okay, let's go on. I don't want to belabor the point, even though I have already. Page 820. Vayikach Korach. Now, Parshas Korach, I want you to know, of all the Parshas in the Torah, you're going to experience this. Right? You will experience Parshas Korach. You know why? Because there is a Korach in every shul, there's a Korach in every community, and there's a Korach in every home. Often there's a Korach in every home. Korach is not only a man, Korach is a concept. All right? And therefore we have to see what Parshas Korach is about. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahos ben Levi. V'dasan va'aviram b'nei Eliav. So you know if Dasan and Avira are involved, it can't be good. Ve'on ben Peles b'nei Ruvain. So you got 4 men who are the leaders of a rebellion. Korach is the man who is upset. Now why he's upset is because I told you when we learned it back in Parshas Naso. Levi has 3 sons, Gershon, Kehos, and Merari. Kehos, the middle son of Levi, has 4 sons. Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Those are the 4 sons in that order. Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Amram has 2 sons, and they are who? Moshe and Aaron. So Amram, his 2 sons have positions of honor. There's another position of honor, which is to be the prince of the tribe of Levi. Theoretically, if the two sons of the oldest son got that position, who should get the next available position? Well, this is the next oldest son, so his oldest son should get the next position. That position was skipped over Yitzhar, skipped over Chevron, and Uziel, the youngest son, has a son named Elitzaphan. And the son of Uziel got that position. Elitzaphan ben Uziel got the next available position, which is to be the head of the tribe of Levi. The oldest son of Yitzhar, which happens to be a man named Korach, got ticked off. Because he felt, listen, if Amram's two sons got the first two positions, Moshe is the leader, Aaron's the Kohen Gadol, the next position should go to me. Which means that the entire thing would have been avoided if he would have gotten that position. He was skipped over, and since he was skipped over, he got ticked off, and his reaction was to create an entire rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the word Korach in Hebrew, it also relates as if you what do you call it? The word Korach means if you the same letters but just pronounced a different way means kereach. Anybody know what kereach means? Kereach, no, not a bad smell. Kereach means bald. The Gemara says there was a man who was married to two women. One was older and one was younger. So the younger woman plucked out his gray hairs, and the older woman plucked out the black hairs. The Gemara says between the two of them, he ended up bald. He ended up kireach mikan o mikan. Korach, who wanted more, ended up with absolutely nothing. He ended up bald. Kireach ended up with absolutely nothing. Not only ended up with absolutely nothing, his father, look at his father's name. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar. Does anyone know what Yitzhar is? What does Yitzhar mean? That's a name, but what else does Yitzhar mean?
Like Yitzhar?
No. Yitzhar is an abbreviation. Yitzhar hara. Yitzhar, Tirosh v'Yitzhar. Anybody know what Tirosh is wine? Yitzhar is oil. So Korach sees his father's name. Hey, I'm the son of oil. What happens to oil? Oil floats to the top. I should be getting this top position. So Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kos ben Levi. There's the line. Hey, somebody skipped over me. And along, as soon as there's ready to be trouble with Moshe Rabbeinu, so who's there to be a thorn in the side? Dasan v'Aviram b'nei Eliyav, ve'on ben Peles b'nei Reuven, and a man named On ben Peles. Now, as the rebellion continues on, this On ben Peles disappears. On ben Peles is not there. We only find Korach and Dasan and Aviram. So what happened to Mr. On ben Peles? So the Medrash says, well, On comes home, and his wife sees the glint in his eye. Women are really good at this, by the way. You walk into the house, and the wife says, hi, how are things? Yeah, good. Yeah, what's going on? Oh, nothing. Oh, nothing. You know, you got this idea, you know, you're gonna go for the big one soon. And you know, you sit down and eat supper, and your wife, you chit-chat, a little chatting, and she goes, well, what's going on? Well, something's going on. How do they know? I don't know, but they know. Right? They always know. And then you say to your wife, well, I just talking to some friends of mine. We had an idea that if we take another mortgage and we put up two of the kids as collateral and we pawn the third one, we're going to be going for it. We could go for the big one. And the wife says, you are not pawning anybody and you're not taking a mortgage. You are going to just go to work tomorrow morning. We're not going for any big one. And then you find out about a week later your friend did it anyway, and your friend is now under federal investigation, and it will be locked up for 20 years, right? And your wife saved you from a lot of trouble, okay? So On ben Peles comes home, and the wife says, yeah, well, what's going on? You go, oh, nothing. Yeah, what's going on? He says, well, you're just a bit of a rebellion against Moshe, and what's in it for you? What's in it for you? If Moshe Rabbeinu right now is the leader, and if the rebellion succeeds, Korach, you're going to be a follower either way. So what's in it for you? What are you getting involved with this for? He says, well, I swore my loyalty. I pledged my, there's always that all of a sudden you become very noble. I pledged my loyalty. She says, listen, I'll take care of it. Right? So when they come looking for him the next day, in the meantime, she fed him a meal and gave him some wine and put him to sleep. That's always the safest thing. Get the husband out of the way. You've made enough trouble. Let me take care of this. And she sends him into the back room, and he goes to sleep. And she stood out in front and Korach and his men came to get On ben Peles, and she exposed her hair. And these guys are on a very high level. Oy, oy, a woman with a shiksa, with her hair exposed. Terrible. So they turn away, and that way On ben Peles' wife saves him from the rebellion. Korach's wife was the one who prompted him. Oh, Korach's wife. So the Medrash says, you see, it all, everything is from the wife. It's all about the wife. Why? What happened to Korach's wife? She says, look at you. What happened? Korach was a Levi. Remember what happened? How did they initiate the Levium into the service? Remember what we learned? What did they do with the Levium? They shaved them bald. So Korach's wife said, look at you. Look what they're doing to you. He takes his sister, his brother, Aaron HaKohen, and he dresses up Aaron HaKohen with all the coins, the garments of the coin. He dresses his sister up, his brother up like a bride on her wedding day, and he shaves bald, makes a monkey out of you. Right? And so Korach said to his wife, yeah, but he did it to himself too. Moshe Rabbeinu shaved, he was also a Levi. He did it to himself. She says, yeah, it's because it's his shtick. So when it's your shtick, you're willing to do it to yourself to make other people look bad. Right? She was the one who prompted Korach. The wife prompted Korach. So, On ben Peles' wife saves him from this rebellion. Now, the question is, I had an interesting insight here that somebody I was thinking about. Have you ever heard of a woman named Kimchis? I was wondering like this. My question was like this. A woman exposes her hair. A woman's not allowed to have her hair exposed. A married woman is not allowed to have her hair exposed. And from the minute they get married, they cover their hair with a tichel, which is the what do you call it? What do you call it in English? A kerchief. What we call, some sort of piece of fabric. What's that?
Hijab.
Hijab, is that? Well, no, not quite. I'm not sure what a hijab is, but if it's what I'm thinking it is, so we're not going to call it that. She covers her hair with what we call a tichel, or she wears a sheitel. The sheitel is a wig. Right? One of the dread fears of women, by the way, is that on a windy day, the wig gets blown off. And it's happened. I know for a woman it's happened to. Yeah, that's a bad thing. So the what do you call it? So why did she expose her hair? Why didn't she just pull up her sleeve? She could have pulled up her sleeve and kept her elbow exposed. Right? The Medrash says she exposed her hair. I was wondering about that. Why did such a thing happen? So if you look in the Gemara, there's a Gemara that says there was a woman named Kimchis. The Gemara in Yuma says a woman named Kimchis, and she had 7 sons who became Kohen Gadol. You know the story of Kimchis? She had 7 sons who became Kohen Gadol. And the Chachamim came to her, the sages came to her, and they said to her, what's your secret? You must have done something that you merited. I mean, a lot of frum women, a lot of good frum women around. Why did you merit to have 7 sons who became Kohen Gadol? So Kimchi said, never did the walls of my house see my hair exposed. That means she was so tznius, she was so modest, she never ever had a situation where her hair was exposed. That's what she said to the Chachamim. And the Chachamim heard her explanation. Remember, nobody ever knows why something caused an effect, but it rang true. And it said that as a result of her not exposing her hair, which should be covered, her sons merited to go into the Holy of Holies, which is the most covered place, the most unexposed place. That was the Mida Keneged Mida. You never exposed your hair, therefore your sons were Kohanim Gedolim who entered the Holy of Holies, which is the most, what we'll call the most sneeze place, because nobody ever goes in there. So it seems that hair was sort of the green kryptonite to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol is allergic to hair. Right? Somehow hair, from Kimchis, we see that there's this opposite force of hair versus Kohen Gadol. If you're to keep the hair covered, then it leads to Kohen Gadol. The hair is exposed. What did Korach want in the end of the Rebbe? What did he want? He wanted to be the Kohen Gadol. Korach wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. So as Korach comes towards the home, and he sees, what does she expose? She definitely exposes her hair. It's the hair is exposed, so that, hair, terrible. For Korach especially, you want to be the Kohen Gadol, and somehow hair is the green kryptonite. Therefore, Korach goes in the opposite direction. By the way, I heard a story, an unbelievable story. There's a kid in a yeshiva in Israel who, remember we were speaking about yesterday about personal behavior. Talk about personal behavior, how it affects people more than anything else. There was a kid in the yeshiva, mainstream yeshiva, who was losing interest. It happens, kids from home, and they're starting to lose interest. And he comes over to the Rosh Yeshiva one day. He says, "Listen, Rabbi, I'm out of here. This is not for me. I can't take the restrictions and the learning and everything else. I want to go. I need to be a little more freedom." All right, he disappears from the yeshiva. 2 weeks later, he resurfaces, and he goes into the Beis Medrash and he starts learning like a house on fire. Shiva doesn't say anything the first day. The second day, he sees him. Third day, he comes over and says, "Hey, Rafi, what happened to you? 2 weeks ago, you were out of here. All of a sudden, you're back and you're learning like you never learned before." He says, "I'll tell you. I was with my friends and we were goofing around. We went here, we went there, we went all those sorts of places. Then we happened to be in right here in Yerushalayim. We were in Geula. We were driving around the streets of Geula, and all of a sudden we heard a noise. So we looked over. We see there's some seminary girl, and she starts yelling at a cab driver. Apparently, she got out of the cab." And the cab driver charged her, and she felt that she was being overcharged. And she throws some money down into the cab and slams the cab door shut. And he immediately took off. The problem is she was wearing some sort of wraparound thing that got caught in the door as he took off. So he took off, and as he took off, it left her in a very awkward position there on the middle of the streets of Geula. And everybody was just frozen. And also we see this yeshiva guy come running towards her. He takes off his jacket, his suit jacket, takes off the jacket. Without looking at her, he comes running like this, throws the jacket on her, and he ran out. He says, "When I saw the behavior of a yeshiva guy, what a yeshiva guy does, I decided that's what I want to be. I want to be one of those guys." Right? So sometimes a person can be in an awkward situation, and so she exposes her hair, and that they back off, they go flying in the other direction. Now, why did Korach start the rebellion right now? Korach's been bothered by this appointment since Parshas Naso. The appointment of Elitzophan that he got skipped over, he's been bothered for a while. So why did he wake up only now? Why did he wake up? What's the answer? Oh. In other words, if you're gonna start a rebellion and you're gonna start trouble, you got to know when to push the right button. You got to know a person who's good at these things also is good at the timing. When the Jewish people were divided up into units, 3 over here and 3 over here and 3 over here, and everything was going well, they've got the Mishkan, that's not the time to start a rebellion. Everybody's in a good mood. Just hold on to it. What happens? Oh, you've been told you're going to be 40 years in the desert, and people are grumbling, and everybody's upset as it is. That's the time to push the button. Then it's ripe for a rebellion. So that's why Korach starts. How does he start the rebellion? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, he only quotes part of the Medrash. Where is it? It's on the left column. Now watch this. Left column. He takes these 250 men, which we'll see in a moment, and then look at the third line. He takes the 250 men that are with him. And on the third line, left column on 820, third line from the top. V'hilbishan talisan shekulan tcheles. He put garments that are completely tcheles on these 250 men. Bo v'amdu lifnei Moshe. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu. Amru lo. Talis shekulo shel tcheles. A garment. Talis doesn't mean a talis, by the way. Talis means a garment. What we call a talis is because that's what we wear in shul, but talis really means a garment. A garment that's completely tcheles. Chayeves betzitzis o petura. Do you have to put on strings on the corners or not? Amar lahem chayeves. Moshe Rabbeinu said yes. Hischilu lischokov. They laughed. Efshar talis shomin acher. Chut echad shel tcheles potra. If you have a garment that's not tcheles, a garment that's completely white. So one string of blue exempts it. Zo shekulo tcheles lo tiftar etzatzma. If it's completely tcheles, don't you think it exempts itself? So they came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, that's all Rashi brings down. The Medrash brings down another claim. They came to her and says, I understand. You have a garment that's completely blue. You need a string of blue. If a white one string of blue takes care of it. So if it's completely blue, isn't that good enough? Number one. Then they came to said, if you have a house full of Sfarim, you have a house full of Gemaras and Chumashim and everything else, you need to put up a mezuzah on the house? He said, yes. He says, I don't understand. If a house with no svarim, 2 paragraphs on the door, take care of it. So all of a sudden you need a, what do you call it? If a house full of svarim, that you got all the chumashim with all the, that needs a mezuzah, what kind of nonsense is, they start laughing at the whole thing. Start making fun of the whole thing. They challenged Moshe Rabbeinu's entire receiving of the Torah. So the question becomes, obviously, why did they come up with this argument? Why did they come up with this argument? Right? These were their questions. Does the tzitzis need one string over here? Does you need a mezuzah on the door? You know what they were asking Moshe Rabbeinu? You know what they asked Moshe Rabbeinu? And Moshe Rabbeinu's response is incredible. What they were really saying to Moshe Rabbeinu is, take a look at take a look at Pasuk Daled. Take a look at Pasuk Daled. Sorry, Pasuk Gimel. 4 lines from the top. 4 lines from the top. Vayikalu al Moshe ve'yorba aleihem. They gather and say to Moshe Rabbeinu, Rav lochem, you're taking on too much. Ki kola eida kulam. Everybody's holy. Uvesocham Hashem. Umadua tisnasu al kal Hashem. Why do you lord yourself over there? We're all holy. So why are you lording yourself over the congregation? So what were they really saying to Moshe Rabbeinu? Why did they ask these questions? Why does one have to stick out on the garment? And why does one have to stick out on the wall? What they're really saying is, why do you have to stick out above everybody else? So you know what Moshe Rabbeinu says to them? Moshe Rabbeinu says to them in Pasuk Zayin. I want you to look at this carefully, gentlemen. In Pasuk Zayin. We'll just finish with this. He says, 2 lines from the top. 2 lines from the top on 822. He says, Zosasu kulachem machtos korach. He says, okay, this is what I want you to do. We're going to have a contest. Take fire pans. I want you to take fire pans. Because they're going to put something in there. They're going to put the Torah in, right? Now look at Rashi. One of the most bizarre Rashis in Chumash. Rashi says, where is it? 6 lines from the top, but that's not the Rashi you want. No, Rashi is 5 lines from the bottom. Rashi says, Machtos. Right column. Machtos. What are Machtos? Kelim shechosim behem gecholim. They are utensils that you dig up coals with. V'yeshlem beis yad. They have a handle. So Rashi gives us a lesson in housewares. Right? What are fire pans? Well, you know, they're something that you dig up, a machta, something you dig up coals with, and they have a handle. I certainly hope they have a handle. Right? Not only that, the word machta has come up before in the Chumash. Rashi never defined it. Why is Rashi defining it here? And Moshe Rabbeinu is responding to Korach. You're asking, why does one have to stand out here and one have to stand? Why do you have to stand out? Moshe Rabbeinu says, take a fire pan. You dig coals with it, and it's got a handle. Even the most insignificant thing in life, you have a whole pan. So why do you need a handle for? What do you need a handle for? Just use the pan itself. No, it's got a handle. If you don't have a handle, you burn yourself. Right? Everything in life has a leader. Everything in life has somebody. There's even a fire pan has something that sticks out. And therefore, I've been appointed by Hashem. I didn't ask for this. Hashem came to me and told me to be the leader. Hashem told me to make Aaron the leader. Hashem told me to appoint Elitzaphan ben Uziel. You guys have tainas on me. You're coming and claiming you're doing it. You did it on your. I didn't do it on my own. It's all because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and you obviously have to have a leader. And Korach doesn't get the hint. Moshe Rabbeinu tries everything he can to avoid violence. It's like martial arts. Didn't they teach you that in martial arts? Walk away.
No.
They don't.
No.
In martial arts, they teach you walk away. Right? Even though you could clobber people and rip out their lungs, they teach you to walk away. Walk away, walk. Moshe is trying everything he can do. At the end of the day, he doesn't get the message. So Moshe Rabbeinu resorts to something a little stronger. All right, well.